we're going to move on to 6.5, our 9:15 a.m. item. A, consideration of proposed resolution authorizing Proposition 64, Public Health and Safety Grant Program Funding, Cohort 3. And B, consideration of agreement number BSCC 93722 by and between the Board of State and Community Corrections and the County of Lake in the amount of
Approximately $2 million.
Approximately $3 million. Just under $3 million for cannabis code enforcement and comprehensive RAP program services, and authorize the chair to sign. Community Development Director Turner.
Thank you. We are excited to share this information with you today. As you may know, one of the priorities of community development is to eventually become less dependent on general fund dollars. We'll do that by developing a grant program, which I'm really looking forward to telling you more about during budget hearings. But for now, this is an example of our staff doing its best to keep our divisions fiscally sustainable. I wanted to extend my appreciation to our code enforcement manager, Marcus Beltramo, because this grant was a lot of work, both to manage once it was handed up to our department to oversee, and to simultaneously apply for renewal. And so it's a great honor and a great evidence of our staff's capability that we've been awarded this new grant. So I will turn it over to Marcus for all the really super cool specifics.
And thank you for that, Director Turner. My name is Marcus Beltramo. I'm the manager of the Code Enforcement Division, and I appreciate the board hearing this issue here today. I know this is atypical. Usually these things are passed in a different manner, but we felt we had to come from the board here today to explain the grant and everything that we plan to do with the grant, and hopefully look for board support and direction on some of these issues. Illegal cultivation of cannabis in Lake County is a high priority issue for code enforcement. It's an issue that affects a lot of what we do in this county environmentally, socially, agriculturally. So code enforcement is coming here to kind of explain what we intend to do here and what the purpose of this grant is. So we did apply and we got a grant for approximately $2.99 million for combating illegal cannabis, cultivation of cannabis in Lake County. Approximately $2.2 million is to be used for cannabis code enforcement. This provides a funding source not typically available to code enforcement to purchase, this provides a funding source not typically available. This allows to purchase equipment, training, and efficiently combat illegal cannabis cultivation at a high level. Now, we've already taken the first step. The first step was identifying and obtaining a funding source. We got the grant, we got approval for the grant, and hopefully today the board will approve that resolution so we can move forward with the grant. But that's just the first step. The next step is we're complementing that with a strategy. And that's where we're seeking board approval and board support here today. We've formulated a comprehensive strategy, and we think we need to capitalize on this opportunity. I think this is our best shot at combating illegal cultivation of cannabis in Lake County. We have the funding, we have a strategy, and we have the officers that are experienced and trained and have the know-how to carry out the strategy. The strategy is aggressive, it is comprehensive, but I think it's a strategy that will, when implemented, could have a major impact on illegal cultivation in cannabis. The issue is we need to bring this strategy to fruition. We have to realize it and make it pragmatic. So what we're looking for, these issues can be somewhat sensitive, but we do need support. Code enforcement doesn't operate in a vacuum. We can't just do all these things by ourselves. Supervisor Sabate made a statement that resonated with me earlier. It's about coming together. And what I've learned about this county is that we don't have all the resources and the manpower to implement and carry out the services that we need to at the level that we need to or is expected of us. What code enforcement has learned is through cooperative efforts and coming together, we can make these things happen. And this is where code enforcement is right now. We need help to implement our strategy and to also bring some of the highlights of what we wish to do with these grant funds to fruition. The first thing I'd like to talk about is organization. So cannabis code enforcement, which is a niche, it's specialized, it's different than traditional code enforcement. It's more of an immediate type of code enforcement. It's something that moves at a faster pace. As part of organization, we've reached out to Fish and Wildlife and the Water Board to get some organization for information sharing, cooperative enforcement efforts. As recently as last week, the Department of Justice, this California Department of Justice, reached out to us to also form a cooperative effort in information sharing and enforcement of illegal cultivation of cannabis. Before we can start with that, we have to execute a memorandum of understandings with these different agencies before we can move forward. This is a hurdle we need to get past to move forward, and so we need direction and support from the board to get these MOUs done immediately so that we can take these next steps to start formalizing, getting together and getting organized and moving forward. I do want to mention to the board, we're in June. So cannabis season has July, August, September, October, November, about 5 months. It's a shortened period. We've already lost some time. It's immediate that we get these MOUs together so we can move forward with these organizations to be effective. Second, we need assistance and support to amend our current administrative penalties ordinance for citations. We spoke with the Department of Justice. One issue that they suggested was amending and modifying our current ordinance for administrative penalties to reduce the correction period to the immediate imposition of fines. This will be a stronger tool for us and a tool that will also help as far as reducing demands on time. Okay. So what's in the grant? So kind of circling back, highlights of the grant is we look to purchase a drone. We need to have a policy in place that we're handling and moving forward with those drones with a policy and procedures so that we are not violating the rights of citizens of Lake County. Also part of the grant is to provide for outside legal services. Cannabis code enforcement is an immediate issue. It requires immediate legal attention. And so to help supplement that need for legal services, we budgeted in the grant monies so that we can afford outside counsel that would work under the supervision of county counsel so that we can address some of these immediate legal issues such as inspection warrants, abatement warrants, any appeal hearings that may be had. A lot of the people the violators that we come across, they tend to lawyer up. We need that immediate legal advice and interaction so that we can address these concerns and resolve a lot of these issues. That outside legal service will also help us to amend the code so that it's more practical for us to implement it in a fashion that addresses illegal cultivation of cannabis in Lake County in an efficient and effective manner. The immediate imposition of fines is one of those things that we would look for legal assistance on to correct that so that we have that tool available for us. One of the other issues that we're looking for board direction and support on is enforcement procedures. Cannabis code enforcement and code enforcement itself went out and researched the issue. We talked to other counties, other cities, other jurisdictions about how they're moving forward to combat illegal cultivation of cannabis. From that, we devised a strategy that has a hybrid of administrative actions and civil actions. It is a complicated strategy. Nonetheless, it's a strategy that we think will produce the results, the anticipated results that we're looking for. But we need assistance to refine that strategy and make it applicable, and to make sure that it's a strategy that works on a whole different levels, respecting people's rights, make sure it's in compliance with the code, and then also that it's actually something that's pragmatic that can be implemented. We also look to purchase, we'll also be using satellite imagery, but we'll also be purchasing additional equipment such as thermal imaging cameras, satellite imagery, decibel meter readers, olfactory meters. These are odor meters. But again, these all require policies. We have to have a policy in place because these are issues that we'll be using for legal purposes in the collection of evidence. But we need some support to craft and formulate those policies and these strategies. Again, there's other issues within the code that need to be cleaned up as well so that we can properly and efficiently enforce cannabis codes. And so really what we're looking for is support for code enforcement to bring these issues to fruition, to implement them. These are things we need. These are things we feel will help us have a high success rate in combating illegal cultivation of cannabis. But what we're looking for is board support and board direction so that we can obtain these or implement these policies and implement these strategies. And this is what I came in front of the board here today. So we have a grant, we have the funding, but we're complementing it with the strategy, but we need assistance and support to implement that strategy.
If I could just add to that, the item that you have before you today is the resolution that's going to authorize acceptance of that grant, as well as the agreement that will help us get started on that. What the additional monies that does not go to code enforcement is used currently by LCOE for a wraparound program that helps our students to get away from use of cannabis products. They have a great first year of information that we'd be happy to request they bring before the board at a future meeting if the board desires. There are a number of points that Marcus made today that, although not part of the agenda item, we felt it is important that the board just understand that we're not just going to run off Maverick and, bring in a drone and start, doing G.I. Joe all over the county without policies that have been vetted and approved. And so those will be coming to you at a future date for your consideration before we start using some of our new toys. But there are a number of ways that this grant is going to help keep our focus on mitigating illegal cannabis in the county in support of the board's direction, support for our legal permittees, and get rid of our illegal. So this is consistent with that. Additionally, one last thing, the satellite imagery that Marcus mentioned is also going to be used in planning. This is the satellite imagery that was very helpful this past year as we were working through our annual compliance monitoring. A number of trips were all over the county to put eyes on the ground to see what was, and do the measurements to make sure that our permittees were in compliance with their use permits. But for those permittees who had opted out or had reduced, we were able to confirm using satellite imagery and saving our staff hours of commute time, hours of staff time to get through the group of the opt-outs for the permittees. So we're really excited to have that back again this year since it was so helpful last year. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. This is a really exciting grant, and I don't think we can give board direction on those policies today, but we look forward to bringing them back and having discussions hopefully in the near term. And then it sounds like we're going to hear more about the grant programs during budgeting. Yes, that is so exciting. Okay, so I'll open it up. I think Supervisor Sabatier had his pen up first.
So I didn't see anything in there, but I would suspect that you'd be working with our sheriff's office when it comes to the usage of drones, because I know that's typically where those policies reside or come from, rather than being separate. So I hope that that's the case in the future. I'm all in favor at looking at greater tools. Satellite imagery could only give you so much. I was actually kind of bummed by the satellite imagery that it's really not better quality, maybe a little bit better, but not much better quality than what you could find on Google Earth, except that it's the date you wanted versus the year before that Google Earth updates every so often. So I think it's useful, and spending more money to continue doing that, I think is good for us. I just hope that we can really advertise to all of our departments that it's available to them, because it's a county program, county contract, not a code enforcement contract. So if assessor's office wants to use satellite imagery, they can. There's so many other uses that I feel we're just not maximizing the amount of money and resources we're putting into our satellite imagery, that others just may not know that it's available to them, or they're underutilizing it. So I hope that we can enhance it. As far as code enforcement goes, we need to make sure that we keep having that subdivision of code enforcement for cannabis. So the funding for that, absolutely 100%. Glad we're able to get the money somewhere else rather than it coming out of general fund. I appreciate that. There was some comments about immediacy about policies. Obviously, we need to do policies. But there was the idea of a third-party law firm to help us with those policies. That one I'm slightly uncomfortable about. As far as going after like criminal investigations or bringing people to court to finish up the case, we know that we've been looking to see if our district attorney can help. Overwhelmed with so much going on there that it's probably not going to be on their radar as much, but I'd love to see how we can get a third-party law firm to help us. But as far as policies go, I definitely, I'm not against it, but it would still require our county counsel's office, in my opinion, to do final reviews and all those other things. And then as far as the immediacy of it, I understand you're trying to set up a better platform to be able to get people. And what I'm about to say is not going to be the most favorable of comments I'm about to make, but we haven't done everything we could with the tools we have today to change behavior either. We're just now, maybe within the last 3 months, and I couldn't tell you what the number is, starting to fine people for code enforcement violations. Until we started doing that, there's no way we should expect anybody to change their behavior. So we already have tools that we have not fully exercised to see what kind of impact and change could be had in our communities. Granted, there are some things that you stated, such as the 0 days versus the 10 days, because if they're gone in 10 days because the pot plants are on wheels and they're being moved from property to property, you got to start your case all over again. So I think that all of those things are good, but we also have the ability to make effect with the tools we have currently. So I kind of want to temper down the immediacy of it. The money will allow us to continue what we have, but let's make sure we use to the fullest of our capabilities what we have at our hands today, and then look to enhance it. I just needed to speak on that immediacy portion a little bit, because I think that we haven't done everything we could.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier. I totally hear you. We have been working with County Council to develop the agreement to help processing those fines so that we could launch it on a larger scale. As you know, with the transition time that we have in County Council Department, we know that that has been delayed a little bit, but we do look forward to working with them on what is clearly a priority for both our department and for the board. Additionally, I just wanted it to be clear, with the satellite imagery, we get a certain number of exposures. And so absolutely, it's a tool that's not just limited to code enforcement or planning. However, we work out a budget. So we may need to find additional funding for a contract amendment should other departments want to use past what we've got. But we're happy to do that because you're right. Even though, you can't see somebody's shoelaces or anything, not that level of resolution, it definitely helps us to see what are plants in the ground and what is brown grass. So not,
Hollywood lied
I
to
mean
us.
like regular grass, yeah, like wild grass. And so it has been a very helpful tool. And then, let's see. That's it. Oh, our normal policy development is done in close collaboration with county council, and we don't look to do anything different. One of the benefits sometimes of having outside assistance is we end up getting examples of other jurisdictions. But we will not stray outside of our normal routine of policy development that's specifically vetted and customized for Lake County.
Okay. Supervisor Green? Go ahead.
Did you have a comment?
I just want to clear up some things. We're not looking at this from a criminal perspective. We're looking at it from an administrative civil perspective. So I just want to be clear on that. And also, I do want to state that cannabis code enforcement, the tools that we have right now are sufficient for traditional code enforcement. What I'm suggesting or what we're recommending here is for cannabis code enforcement, which is a different animal, it's a different creature, it's different in nature. And so the tools for traditional code enforcement do not always support cannabis code enforcement. That's the point I'm trying to bring to the board here today, or that's the point I'm trying to make. And then the drone policy, that drone policy needs to be, I'm not sure if the sheriff has a drone yet. I believe we've spoken with them to get organized and have a more formal relationship with them. But we need a drone policy that's for code enforcement and meets code. So law enforcement and code enforcement, even though code enforcement is quasi-law enforcement, it's different. And so we need a policy that's conducive to code enforcement so that we're doing it the right way and we're following the procedures and the wishes of the board. So I just wanted to be clear on those points.
And Supervisor Green, do you mind if I just respond real quick? To me, it's about the Fourth Amendment, right? And whether it's code enforcement or law enforcement, I think that's the most important aspect of drones. It's very easily a breach of privacy, depending on what you're doing and where you are. So I think it can cover both to a certain extent. It's the details that eventually get to that. And as far as criminal, I would love to see it go criminal because there's a lot of environmental disasters happening out there and we're not doing much about it because we don't have that avenue at that moment. And I think we have to eventually go there. We can't let what's happening in some of these isolated areas happen. It's out of sight, but when you see it, it's disgusting.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. Number one, congratulations. I can see the hard work that went into this, and the award speaks to that. On the wrap, at some appropriate time in the future, I would like to hear a little bit more from LCOE, if only because wrap services, the generic term, can apply to any number of programs already being offered by DSS and stuff like that. So I love adding another tool to LCOE's toolbox to operate this family wrap, but it is part of a larger wraparound service puzzle, and I just want to make sure I have a full understanding of that, at least the wrap services of this grant. I'd like to figure out where that goes in the bigger wrap services puzzle someday. It doesn't have to happen today. And then for the, this is focused on administrative and kind of civil law versus criminal enforcement, but we've spoken several times before about how we coordinate or don't necessarily coordinate between actual criminal enforcement involving our sheriff and DA's office, what is turning into probably the larger share of enforcement against illegal activities, including code enforcement. And then I heard a little bit of compliance work going on with the satellite imagery. So just to clarify, this grant is all about illegal cannabis activity, And so the programs and the equipment you're doing is intended to target illegal cannabis activity. Is it allowed to do a little mission creep into compliance work or criminal work with these grant funds, or are you just locked into civil and administrative only?
So the grant that was put forward to the state, that was approved by the state, was for compliance or monitoring compliance of legal permitted sites, the combat of illegal cultivation of cannabis, and also addressing environmental issues caused by the illegal cultivation of cannabis.
So it does permit for compliance work?
Yes.
Okay. And to the questions about third party and real time, when you're out in the field, you do need real time consultation. I do understand that, if only to address certain privacy concerns that may arise. And the other reason we need that third party support is as we get closer to really kicking the tires on the administrative penalties this board has passed before, it's going to get sticky. You're going to be talking about growers. You're going to be talking about property owners who may be jointly and severally liable. You're going to have a hard time collecting those fines. And I don't know if the words administrative hearing officer got put into your grant, but as we get to the idea that we're going to be slapping fines around, the appeals will come with that. As we get better at applying fines, those appeals will be coming up hot and heavy. And if I understand the current process, they'll come to this board for that appeal hearing. Is that right?
That at this time, that's correct, but we are putting forth we will be coming forward to the board for a company to do the collection and processing of administrative fines, and part of that service also is that they have their own certified hearing officers. So that's another way that we would address any appeals in a timely fashion. They provide a service that allows for certified hearing officers. But again, that would be if the board wishes to exercise that option or that service. If the board wishes to have the appeals coming from the board, that's your prerogative.
Yeah, love to hear more about that. So just like we clarified, a little bit of compliance work can creep under the umbrella of this grant. What about criminal enforcement?
So code enforcement doesn't do criminal enforcement. We do administrative. So criminal is something, we have had meetings with the sheriff's office to have a more formal relationship for information sharing. But I really can't speak in depth as to the criminal issue, as that's outside the scope of county code enforcement.
Well, it'd be nice to get some of that clarity. Because again, right now we can say with some assurance we'll be doing some compliance work with this. But it's a big grant, multi-year grant. And just as I have had questions about cannabis code enforcement, I've also had questions about criminal enforcement. Some of these cases do need to go there. And I can't second guess this because it's focused on what it is. But I do think it addresses many of the needs we've talked about in a really good way. So I'm very excited about it, be supportive of it. But I still think there's more on top of this that maybe this doesn't fully address. So thank you.
Yeah, Vice Chair Simon?
Yep, just want to make sure that you know right off the bat, I completely support this. I want to thank you for the hard work being brought to the board right now. Understand we've got a lot of other policies that will be built off of this program, but when we attend our community meetings, our town halls, you know, we've done a good job of establishing the industry here for the legal folks that want to go through that process. So I just really appreciate the hard work being done here to start to talk about the other side of this, the illegal cannabis enforcement side through code enforcement. That's what we're talking about today. And so you have my support. I'm going to support this today and hearing the community. And I can't be the only one that gets these complaints. You know, if we're going to establish this industry, and I've always envisioned getting to the point here in Lake County just like we are. There are no moonshine places set up in the mountains. There are no illegal craft brew places. Everybody has a license. Everybody understands the process, and that's what we're trying to work towards. And hopefully that's going to establish that legal market that really helps us out. So I greatly appreciate the grant that was found, that was written, and understand the complexities of that. But I know that this is just the first step. But the first step in this conversation, which we've had many times at this diocese, is the other side of it. We've been supporting the industry. Now it's time to say, listen, if you're going to do it in Lake County, you're going to do it correct. You're not going to affect our environment. You're not going to affect our communities. We're going to work together this and help legalize this market in the right way. So I appreciate the hard work. You're going to get a yes vote from me today. And I know it's just the beginning process. Like you said, Marcus, a lot of work needs to be done. I know there's privacy issues that were brought up and others, but using technology is the thing that's going to get us moving forward here. We all know how hard it is just to staff and to travel around this county, from one end to the other, and the mass wilderness that we have, like Supervisor Spate said, out of sight, out of mind, but it's affecting folks that live out in these areas in our communities, whether it's the road conditions, constant working hours, generators running, all the different things that happen. I just want to thank you for bringing this today, and we'll work together to keep moving forward. So, and we did purchase, this board did purchase at one time from a former DA a drone. I don't think we've ever used it. It may have been sold. It was a former district attorney brought it to this board where it was bought for crime scenes. I don't think it ever got established or used. So we're moving in that direction, but I appreciate you guys having that opportunity to move forward under this grant.
Great. Do we have any public comment? I don't see anyone in the chambers, and I'm looking in the Zoom room. I am not seeing any hands up. So I'll bring it back to the board. Thank you so much. This has been a priority of ours for a long time. Was really creative. I know this took a lot of effort, and really excited to hear more about this and how we can support the process and the policies and everything that needs to be built around this. So thank you so much. And sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Supervisor Crandall.
I like how you mentioned the moonshine moke, because there is SB 820, which addresses seizure of property that's going through the state, and it's based off of the moonshining, the way that they handled moonshining before. I hope that they start using that for meth labs, but don't want to go off on a tangent about that because this has nothing to do with it. But I support this as well. I feel like if the more resources that we have in this capacity, it gives us a chance to deal with the biggest problem of illicit cannabis. Oftentimes in our public forums, people are upset with cannabis, but they don't realize that the real problem is illicit. The actual use permitted or permitted cannabis projects are regulated. I know that there's a lot of comments from the public as well, asking why we are authorizing cannabis and all of these other things, but the reality is it's happening either way, and that was the goal of everything that has taken place for the past 8 years, if not more, when it came to bringing cannabis to a situation where we can tax it and permit it and whatnot, was to bring some of those illicit cannabis folks to the table in order to ensure it wasn't illegal and affecting our communities and whatnot. So for me, I really appreciate the work on this. I know that it takes a lot to do grants. It takes a lot of also a lot of things that we have to comply with in regard to state law. If I noticed one of the verbiage that has to do with Executive Order N622, Russia sanctions. You know, those are things we have to agree to when it comes to accepting these grants. And I know in the past, people have been upset with us for putting together laws that have to do with that. But these are things we have to do, accept this funding. And I agree with accepting this funding, and I appreciate the work that you've done on this. So.
Want to take some action?
Is there one action?
It's a twofer, so I'm going to start off by offering the resolution.
All right, the resolution's been offered. Oh,
That's fine. That is fine for the first part.
And then I'll
Do you
do
have
a
some
motion
comments
for
on
the second. Yes.
All right, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
And Supervisor Pyska?
yes.
And second, I move to approve standard agreement number BSCC.
Hold on.
No?
Sorry, members of the board, if I may, we did note that the standard agreement that's referenced in that second portion, subject to motion, that it's been signed already by Susan Parker, the CAO, who is one of the authorized officers under the agreement for signing the standard agreement. And so the motion, if your board wishes to approve it, the motion would be to approve and ratify standard agreement number BSCC 937-22 by and between the Board of State and Community Corrections and the County of Lake in the amount of $2,996,546.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much.